Amid flaring tensions and several violent encounters now between local residents and federal agents, the ACLU has been out front reminding the public about their legal rights. And this morning, now with the National Guard confirmed to be on the ground here in the Chicago area, do those rights change? So here to answer that is Yohnka with the Illinois ACLU. So let's just dive right into that question now that the National Guard's here. What has changed about this dynamic, if anything?
Nothing. The Constitution remains the Constitution. Nothing, because of what force it is you're interacting with, changes that. You still have all the same rights and protections that you've had before. You have the right not to answer any questions, not to produce any documents. You have the right to ask for a lawyer. You have the right to ask if you're being arrested, and if you're not, to walk away and just move away from a situation. And you have a right to, to not consent to a search of your person, your car, or your home.
You guys have filed a First Amendment related lawsuit already. I did want to ask you about a video that's really making the rounds over the last 24 hours, and that is this local priest who is seen right outside that ICE facility, and he appears to get basically just hit in the head with a pepper ball, right?
Yes,
so
exactly.
What are the legal implications there?
So first of all, the part of this is that he is being targeted in that way because of his speech. This is a violation of the First Amendment, and the ACLU, with a group of legal organizations, has gone to court and asked a court to bar the federal government from engaging in just this sort of behavior. The other thing that we see is there's nothing that he's doing that justifies that sort of violent reaction, and that is both at Broadview and across the area, as we've seen the government, try to enforce this immigration policy of theirs. We're seeing this sort of enhanced activity that is targeting people with increased violence, with increased roughness, in order to try to intimidate and coerce people into going along when they don't have to. And so I think that, it's one of the features of this is that the administration says they need the National Guard because of violence in the communities, when they're the ones who are bringing the violence to the communities in the first instance.
One of the things that Governor Pritzker said, I believe he said this on CNN, was that there were actual American citizens in that raid on an apartment building that were at least temporarily detained. There's reports that some of them were zip-tied. What do you expect, legally speaking, to happen in the wake of incidents like that he reported?
So I think there's two things. One of the things is that, I think just it's worth noting is that the ICE agents and CPB and the other federal agencies, they brought along cameras to record all this. They put out social media about this event before they demonstrated what it was about, before they produced a warrant, before they showed why it was that they did this raid. I would expect, as the result of it, you will see challenges both to the raid itself in terms of its merits and why it was done. I think you will also see a number of individuals who will bring lawsuits for being detained, having children detained, having children zip-tied together and taken away simply for being present in a particular place at a particular time with no rationale from the government at all.
Okay. Lastly, can you guys have actually filed a lawsuit already. Will you tell me, run through the basics of what that is? This is related to the First Amendment, correct?
Right.
And named as defendants, I did see Kristi Noem's name.
Correct.
And, and Donald Trump's name as well.
Yes, Kristi Noem and other ICE and DHS officials are part of this. We, again, have filed with a group of legal organizations, have filed a lawsuit challenging the violence that's been used against protesters at the Broadview Detention Center. What we've seen is the use of projectiles and pepper spray, or pepper balls and chemical agents against protesters who are simply exercising their right to the First Amendment, or under the First Amendment, to speak out, and journalists who are gathering information. We are hopeful that a court will will issue a temporary restraining order in the next few days or few hours that will limit that ability of the government to engage in those practices at Broadview, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Okay, another thing we're waiting on is this judge's ruling on the constitutionality, the legality of National Guard troops actually being federalized and sent here on the ground to Illinois. Any predictions there? We expect that to happen today, this decision.
You know, I think you can go broke making predictions on what a court will do, but I think if you follow the logic that we saw both in the court's rulings in Los Angeles and in Oregon, that there just isn't a reason to justify the bringing in of the National Guard. There aren't the conditions that are met that allows the president to federalize the Guard over the objections of the governor and bring them into the state of Illinois. So we'll see what the judge does with this case.
Zooming out a little bit, what do you think the administration is up to here? There's a lot of speculation that they're kind of testing their limits here right now. Do you agree with that?
I actually think it's a little bit different than testing their limits. I think if you look at the fact that Chicago is under the microscope and getting all of this attention, that what this really reflects is the fact that we live in a community and we have elected officials who represent people in that community who oppose the Trump administration's policies. And Donald Trump can't stand that. I think if you go back to when the National Guard was sent into L.A., Kristi Noem went and did a press conference there in which she announced that the Guard would stay until they had, quote, liberated the people of Los Angeles from their elected officials. I think that's what this is. This is, in effect, this is an attempt to overrule the small d democratic process in Chicago and Illinois and let Donald Trump rule our city from the White House.
Okay, Ed Yohnka, thank you for the perspective this morning. We appreciate you coming in studio. We're switching gears now.